All right, let's get right to it. What's the meaning of humanity? I mean, that's got to be the biggest question out there, right? In this explainer, we're going to unpack one very specific and pretty fascinating answer to that question, drawing it all directly from our source material.
It's a question that everyone thinks about at some point. Why are we even here? Is there some grand plan, or are we all just a product of cosmic chance? Well, the source we're looking at today doesn't just ask the question, it gives a very clear answer.
And boom, there it is, right out of the gate. The whole idea we're exploring today is that meaning isn't something we find or create ourselves. Instead, it's given to us by a creator. And without that divine purpose, the text argues, our existence is basically meaningless.
So let's really dig into that. What does a creator-given purpose actually look like, according to this text? That's what we're covering in our first section.
Okay, so this concept has a name, divine purpose. And the idea is pretty straightforward, really. It says that nothing, and I mean nothing, is an accident. The solar system, every plant and animal, and yeah, us, humanity, it was all intentionally designed by God. Each piece was given a very specific job to do, a role to play in this massive cosmic scheme.
Now, this naturally brings up a really interesting point. If there's this one divine plan, how does this framework explain all the amazing and sometimes confusing diversity we see across the human race?
Well, according to this source, all that diversity isn't some historical accident. Nope. It's actually presented as a deliberate part of the design. The world was meant to be this incredible tapestry of different peoples and cultures, all part of the original blueprint from the very beginning.
And the text gets pretty specific about it too, mentioning all sorts of different groups. You've got ancient civilizations like the Babylonians and Egyptians right alongside modern peoples. It's really trying to show this vast spectrum of humanity that was all part of the intended design.
Now, here's the critical part. These differences aren't just skin deep. The source claims they're fundamental, going all the way down to the core origins and the very ways of thinking for each of these groups. And that idea really sets the stage for what comes next. But of course, this leads to a tough question, right? If all this diversity was part of the plan, why is human history so full of conflict? Our next section dives right into the source's explanation for it all.
This is where the source draws a really important distinction. It frames the origins of the Israelites as being directly tied to God's will, a divine covenant. But for other nations, their origins are described as being rooted in their own unique human-made cultures and philosophies.
So from this point of view, conflict isn't just random. It happens when humanity wanders off that divine path. When people start following purely human-made ideas instead of staying aligned with God's will, well, that's where you get all the friction, the division, and the conflict. Okay, so if clashing human ideas are the problem, does the text offer a solution, a way to get back to some kind of unity? It sure does, and that's exactly what we're looking at in Section 4. The solution proposed in the text is crystal clear. It puts forward the teachings of Jesus as a universal message for literally everyone, to love and support one another. And this mutual support isn't just a nice idea. It's presented as the actual way to get things done and fulfill God's will, together.
So this isn't just some vague, let's all get along kind of thing. The source positions this as a very practical strategy for overcoming those really deep ideological divides we talked about. The idea is that if everyone focuses on a shared higher purpose and on genuinely caring for each other, humanity can find its way back to unity.
And that brings us to our final section, where all these big abstract ideas get boiled down into a clear, actionable job description for humanity. So what are we actually supposed to do in this framework? The source lays out three main duties. Number one, the top priority is to please God. Number two is super practical. Be good stewards of the planet and maintain order and balance right here on Earth. And number three is a more personal duty for believers, to actively step up and fulfill their specific responsibilities in this grand design. Let's just break that down a bit. Pleasing God is the ultimate why. It's the main motivation for everything else. Maintaining order is a hands-on job, covering everything from social harmony to taking care of the environment. And finally, those duties for believers, that's all about active service, about tangibly doing their part in the divine plan. And really, that's the whole shebang. It all ties together. We started with this huge question about the meaning of life, and this source provides a complete A to Z answer. It goes from a divine purpose, to explaining diversity and conflict, to offering a path to unity, and then lands on a concrete list of things to do.
So we'll leave you with this final question to chew on. Look, whether you agree with this source or not, walking through a framework like this really challenges you to define what you believe. How does seeing humanity through this lens, this idea of a divine purpose, change how you think about our role here on Earth and our place in the universe? Thanks for joining us for this explainer.